Hey, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, late afternoon, depending on what time it is now. You're joining us today to look at escaping the dungeon and dealing with writer's block, how to feel inspired again, and keeping that creativity alive. Got some amazing authors with us this evening, and first thing I'd like to do is just go around the panel, just introduce yourselves, let us know a bit about yourselves, what you do, and then hopefully we'll get on some questions. Rachel, would you like to start, please?
Sure, yeah. I'm Rachel A. Cooper. I co-author with E4Y, and right now together we're working on a Titan's Core. It's currently dropping on Royal Road, a couple of chapters a week, and it's a lit RPG isekai tower climber.
It's Titan's Core, is that right, Rachel?
That's right, yeah.
I'm going to follow it right now. Hells yeah, there it is. All
Thank
right.
you. We appreciate it. Yeah.
I'll start reading it.
Mike, do you want to go next, mate?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, guys. I'm Mike Norris, author of the Primal Edge series. My second book, Rising, just dropped last Thursday. So please go check that out. It's been doing great. Hit top 15 on a couple categories. So woohoo, we're still going strong. I'm also the owner and writer of the lit RPG cultivation magazine called Fables. You can find us on Facebook. And yeah, I write cultivation lit RPG, and I'm super excited to be here.
Dude, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
What was the name of the book again? I'm sorry.
It's called Rising. If you type Rising Primal Age series, it'll come up. You got a big golden phoenix on there.
Sorry. I promise. I'm done. I'm good. Okay.
Right, on to you, Timothy.
Hello, I'm Timothy McGowan. I'm the author of the Arcane Knight series, among other series. Going to be working, or I have just finished working. I'm working on book 2 of a new series called Dragonstone Academy, and that'll be coming out, the first book, here in the next month or two. So, yeah, that's me.
Excellent, thank you. And then finally, James.
Hi, guys. I'm just happy to be here. This is so exciting. I kind of know all of you, except I don't think I've ever met Timothy, so this is really a pleasure. I'm James Hunter. I've been writing for quite a while. I think I'm on book 43 or 44. I don't know. I'm starting to get enough that I'm losing track of them. I've written a bunch of series. I have books here. Visual Bound is one of my series. Still active. Rogue Dungeon is a Dungeon Core series, complete at 6 books, so you can check that out on Amazon and Audible. Viridian Gate Online is sort of one of the OG lit RPG series from back in the day. It's still a great read, 8 books, complete series. You check that one out. And my newest project is this bad boy called Discount Dan. If you're a big fan of sort of the dungeon crawler Carl sort of subgenre of lit RPG, this is kind of right up that same alley. Oh my God, I have met Timothy. I must have met you at some point to have given you this book. I'm a sucker.
Yeah, we met at Dragon Con. It's okay.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you. This one is not out yet. It'll be out early 2025. But you can check out the book on Royal Road. The entire first book is up there, and most of the second book is up there. So go check it out there as well. And then additionally, I run Shadow Alley Press with my wife, Jeanette. We've been publishing other people since about 2017. I think we have 25 active authors right now, and we've produced on the Shadow Alley side somewhere around 300 titles since 2017. So we've been doing it for a minute. And like I said, I'm just happy to be here. This is so fun.
Thank you very much, guys. Right, so to kick us off then, because we're going to be talking about writer's block, I'm going to make the assumption that all 4 of you at some point have met that brick wall and had to try and then push through it. So what I will ask you is, has it happened more than once? And if I can start with you, Timothy, this time, please.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's happened more than once. I would have thought that maybe I'd learned my mistake of going overboard and burning myself out and then not doing it again, but I've done it several times. In fact, yeah, So it's something that persists and will continue to get you if you're not careful.
Okay. Mike, what about yourself?
Yeah, I actually hit writer's block pretty heavily in this book too that I just released. So my first book was just a little over about 100,000 words, and then this one I really wanted to pump it up just from some feedback from some readers. So I really almost wanted to double it. So I ended up going to like 150,000 words, and around like 120, 130, I really hit a writer's block. And it took me about like 2-3 weeks to really get over it. I even posted it on Fables, like how does everybody get over writer's block? I'm hitting one pretty bad, and like the community really rallied, and like we're just typing away their responses, and a lot of authors are on there, so they kind of like chimed in on their thoughts on how to get over it. And a lot of the consensus is you just got to take a step back and then maybe do some other stuff that you enjoy, maybe start working on a different project, and then come back and that'll help you get through it. So yeah, definitely have hit writer's block quite frequently. So
How about yourself, Rachel?
Yeah, I would say so. It can hit like at any time. So it could be like maybe it's at the beginning of a chapter or a scene you're trying to work through, but it can also hit like even post plotting of like just getting the story started. So kind of try to avoid that as much as possible.
Okay. James?
So yeah, I've been writing full time for 10 years, and writer's block exists on a spectrum of terrible emotions that I experience regularly. So there's like I would say like once a week, there's a day where I like, fuck this, I'm never gonna write again. I'm done writing forever. I hate writing so much. God, why did I even choose a stupid dumb profession? And then the next day I'll be like, JK, it's fine, everything's good, back at it. That happens like once a week. So that's not writer's block, but it's like kissing cousins to writer's block. And then you have like the drunk uncle of writer's block that shows up at Thanksgiving and says weird things, and that's called burnout. I've also done the tango with burnout quite a few times. In terms of writer's block, I want to make the distinction because writer's block is not burnout. Burnout is more all-encompassing than writer's block, and sometimes they go hand in hand, where when you are burnt out, generally you also have writer's block. But sometimes writer's block can be its own thing. So, for example, burnout is sort of better classified as like when you feel total apathy toward all of your work in general. It's not just I'm struggling with this scene. It's I don't give a shit about this scene. I don't care about this book. I don't want to write anymore. I'm done doing this. That's more burnt out, where writer's block is very specifically a problem of, man, I've hit a roadblock here, and I don't know how to overcome it, and so I can't progress the story forward anymore. And you're just banging away at the keyboard, and nothing's really happening. And even writer's block sort of exists, I think, on its own spectrum. I've had cases where maybe writer's block will last for a day or two, and then I've had more severe cases when I was working on book 4 of the Vigilbound series. I had writer's block so bad it lasted an entire month, and I legitimately thought like, holy shit, I think I can't write anymore. Like I think, and it was like an identity crisis for me, because it's like, I've been doing this for 10 years. If I'm not a writer, what am I anymore? And so that certainly feeds into sort of the negative cycle. So yes, I am well aware of the mortal enemy that is writer's block and its best bud, burnout. And I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Taking that into consideration then, how do you get past that block? What have you done to get yourself inspired again, or feel inspired again to continue that writing in the frame that you want to? What's got you back from that edge of darkness, of doom and gloom, where you're not feeling it? Rachel, could I start with you this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's like several different strategies that you can kind of try and implement, but not all of them are going to work at the same time. So like having to vary it up. So whether sometimes like I've had to change the medium for coming up with the scene. So instead of writing it out, I'll just kind of draw out the scene or kind of paint it. And that having a different creative outlet to get it out there can help me visualize more of the elements that I want to put into the scene, and then I'm able to kind of go back in and write it. Other times, like maybe just going out for a walk, like not knowing where to take the story, like what beasts or something that might be encountered. Just getting a fresh look at things has always been very useful. And then another one that's been helpful was whenever, like, I was having struggle getting through a scene, like another scene where the character was fighting a beast, and I had come up with a particular beast for them to fight. I was also battling, I had like a sore throat and cold, so I was like merging both at the same time, and it ended up just writing some of the sensory experiences that I was feeling into what the character ended up feeling, so that way they could, it just highlighted both. It just worked out.
Cool. James, what about yourself?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. For me, and I want to mention something Rachel said. All writers' advice is basically bullshit. No one knows what they're doing. If it works for you, then use it. If it doesn't work for you, discard it thoroughly. Everyone's process is different, so just bear that in mind with all of this stuff. With that being said, there's a couple of things that have worked for me. So generally, when I'm feeling writer's block and not burnout, I have found over the years that writer's block to me is a subconscious me understanding that I messed up somewhere previously. And it's like my subconscious mind telling me like, hey, bro, there's a part of your story before where we're at that doesn't work. And if you keep pushing this forward, you're going to have to rewrite a bunch of stuff. And so it's like my subconscious is putting on the emergency brakes so that I can't progress forward. Because if I keep pushing through it, I'm going to get to a place where I'm 10 or 20,000 words in. And then I realize like, oh shit, there's this giant plot hole that if I had addressed it here, it would have changed the story in these ways and it would have made a better story. So the very first thing that I do generally is I'll go back and I'll look at the last 10,000 words that I wrote. And I'll try to figure out, hey, is there something here that's not working? Something that's not clicking with the world building, something that's not consistent with the pacing, something that's not consistent with the character arcs that I'm trying to build. And then when I figure that out, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. If I can fix this thing, it's going to make this scene easier. It's going to make this arc easier. It's going to make this make more sense. So that's the first thing that I do. A couple of other sort of hacks, barring that, is I outline. I'm a really prolific outliner. I think that the most difficult thing for writer's block is the blank page. So really genuinely not knowing where you're going to go and just like staring at a blank page is extraordinarily hard and very, very daunting. So if you have an outline, even if it's a rough outline, and you can just start with a bullet point of this is the thing that needs to happen in this scene, it sort of jumpstarts the creative juices and sort of points you in the right direction at least. So having some kind of outline can be very helpful. In a practical, everyday sense of how do you avoid writer's block, this is a hack that works for me pretty well, which is when I'm stopping my writing. So I do writing sprints. And when I stop a writing sprint, I never finish a complete thought. The natural inclination for a lot of people is, oh, I want to get to the end of the scene or I want to get to the end of the chapter and then I want to stop there because that's a natural pause point. No. I will stop literally in the middle of a sentence, because if I stop in the middle of a sentence, then when I come and I want to pick it back up, I know how to finish that sentence. So I'm already writing. And once I start writing a little bit, that's the hardest part for me, is starting. Once I'm started, my brain's like, oh, right, I know how to do this thing. And then it just starts doing the thing. So just like not stopping at a natural a pause point, or even like stopping in the middle of a sentence so that you're forced to pick up where you left off, can be tremendously valuable if you struggle with writer's block or starting.
Cool. That's a nice, interesting little bit of information. Mike, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, writer's block really stems from outside stimuli, right? I think I really hit it when I feel that writing has become a job. I am an indie author, as I'm sure many of us are. And so I have a full-time job. I have a family. I just had a baby like a month ago. So, writer's block is I think it's from too much stimuli, and I just kind of lose myself, and I'm just writing to write. I'm not enjoying the process anymore. So what I've noticed, especially during that really big writer's block that I had when writing Book 2 Rising, is I just took a step back and I just focused on myself, right? I would, work out, or I would pick up a series that I read previously that I really loved and just delved into that and lost myself again, right? It just got the creative juices flowing again and just got my head right. And de-stress, I think, is a big one, because a lot of us, writers, we're like, man, we got to get these books out. If we don't get them out, then we're going to lose following. People are going to lose interest, and again, it just becomes a job. And how many of us love jobs? Obviously, if we're a full-time writer, that'd be awesome, like James. But it can be really challenging. So that's what I just do. I just take a step back. I completely stop writing. I'm still thinking of ideas in my head, right? I'm still thinking of the story and how to progress and things like that. But I still focus on things that are fun, and just like I said, get the creative juices flowing, and that really helps me get through writer's block.
Cool. Timothy?
Can you remind me of the question again? I mean, everyone's had this really good feedback, but I've kind of lost the question.
Yeah, it's basically how do you get through it? What do you do to inspire yourself again once you've got through that initial phase?
Yeah, for me, the thing that seems to work is just time. I have to give myself a break, and sometimes it's hard as a full-time author, and some families relying on your income. You you take too much time off and you kind of lose out. So I'm soaking up all these other answers and things, which are going to be helpful for me. But right now, the only thing that really works is to give it time, let my brain reset, or take in a new book, get some more creativity, something dumped into my head. But yeah, time is my big answer.
Okay. Would you advise that writing something completely different genre, a different approach can help with writer's block? James?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple quotes. That's also one of the things my good buddy Michael Chatfield often says is a change is as good as a break. And I think that's true. Sometimes I have found that I have writer's block. Again, this is how you can distinguish between writer's block and burnout, is when you can switch from projects and you can say, yeah, you know what, I'm feeling a little burnt out on this project. I have writer's block on this project. I don't know how to progress on this project, but maybe I can shift gears and try something else in a different project. And as long as you still find excitement in the writing part, then probably it's a project specific type of writer's block. And sometimes, yeah, stepping away can be very helpful. And sometimes writer's block tends to pertain to a very specific project. Again, that's where I kind of come back to it's my gut reaction of, oh, there's something that's wrong, and I need to sort of chew on what it is that I did wrong and how I can fix it before I can move on with the story. And sometimes switching and just working on a second project is the way to go. Generally, and again, this does not work for everybody, but it works for me. I usually have 2 active projects. So I have my main project, which is getting like 60 to 70% of my time. And then I'll have my secondary project, which maybe is only getting 20 or 30% of my time. And it's the project that I'll work on maybe one day a week or a couple of hours every other day, or it's not my main focus. But it's kind of nice to cycle into something else and sort of as a palate cleanser and clear my head of, man, I'm so entrenched in this story that you break out and say, oh, no, this other thing I can do as well. The only problem that I generally have with balancing 2 projects is if the voice of the 2 projects is very, very similar, they can end up sounding like each other. So generally, whatever projects I'm working on, I try to make them a little bit different. Like, so Discount Dan is the thing I'm working on, and that's, first person. While this other thing I'm working on is a kind of a cultivation thing, and it's third person, it's second world fantasy. It's very, very different tonally. So that way I'm not mixing the voices of the characters or any of those other things. And that makes it a little easier to toggle back and forth. That's so many projects. That's a lot of projects. That's maybe too many. I don't know. You do you've been doing it for a long time, Stuart.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing 5 projects myself. Mike, have you got any thoughts on that one, please?
Sorry, I also lost the question. I was just paying so much attention to James.
Do you ever change? sort of change genre, write differently, approach something differently in that context?
Yeah, so I'm still a relatively new writer, so I did just start a second project alongside my Primal Age series, so I am doing that. But I also, like I said, I also run Fables, which is Lit RPG Cultivation Magazine. So I am every month, working on writing that. So that actually definitely helps me in the process. But yeah, for me, really getting through it is really just taking time for myself. That's what I've found that really helps me. I also remember Michael's words when I interviewed him for Fable, so I agree with James when he said that. But yeah, I think everybody's so different, how you approach things. So some people might even find it even more challenging and even get deeper into writer's block if they're trying to work on 2 projects at the same time, or 5 or 6 or whatever, right? And some people might find it easier. So it really depends on the individual.
Cool. Timothy?
I have tried in the past, but I get so lost in the weeds on stories that I fully engross myself to the point where when I try to switch gears, it's sometimes not as helpful, because then I try to switch back and I'm like, wait, I'm so stuck into this other story that I'm not progressing. I have in between, because I'm very much a go straight through until I finish something kind of person. So I have at the end of a project gone on to something that's vastly different to kind of give myself a palate cleanser and help myself not to get burnt out on that particular, because I'm writing things that are fairly similar in the Lit RPG genre. Like you have changes and things are different, but overall, genre-wise, we are very similar in how we're writing things. And so going to something different has definitely helped in the past. But like I said, it's something more that I do at the end. I want to try again, like James mentioned, trying to have like a 2-project type thing to help with the burnout and the whatnot. But we'll see how that works. I think I've tried something similar in the past and it didn't quite work out like I thought.
Fair enough. Rachel, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think so I wouldn't say I've necessarily written in a different genre, but having a couple of projects, one that's has some cozy slice of life elements that's different from the other kind of more hardcore lit RPG. It is nice to be able to switch back and forth, especially if you get stuck on one, then you can go work on the other, and then hopefully that frees up some time. I will say too that just reading in a different genre, like I think I jumped from reading from lit RPG and went to a romance, which I'd never do, but that was like fresh because like I remember the opening line was something kind of gritty, is like the head popped off, and I was like, that was unexpected for a romance, but that could be seen different ways. It's not as it was an actual head, but so.
I feel like that's much worse.
Rachel, you're losing it.
And then I'm like, oh my God, that's horrifying. That's way worse than like for the decapitation. I don't know what that looks like or how that would happen. I hope I never find out. So
I think we understood, Rachel. I think you're the one that brought it there. So
yeah. It was a truck that was a decapitation. Yeah.
Right.
That is surprisingly much better. Thank you for clarifying that immediately.
I don't know. Right. So it's been mentioned sort of in passing, but have you ever found that you've potentially come up with a writer's block because of feedback? Because from your audience or from what someone said to you, or it could be an ARC reader, it could be anyone, beta reader, Patreon, anyone like that. Has that ever caused you to suddenly question and look at what you're writing and put a pause on it from that perspective? Timothy?
Yeah, actually, that has happened. It happened with my Arcane Knight series. As it got a little more popular, I was paying more attention to the reviews because I didn't want to disappoint the audience, and I wanted to keep it kind of what they were expecting and what I had planned. And there was times where a certain feedback kind of went to my head, where I was like, didn't feel like I could continue until I figured out how I wanted to go forward. But yeah, so it has happened before.
In that situation, did you find yourself changing your story to meet what they were saying?
So a little bit. I ended up trying to find a middle ground because I don't want my stories to be dictated by the feedback of the readers, because I'm, in the end, I'm trying to write a story and I have a story to tell. But I did take it into account, and it did affect how I wrote after that. So
cool. Rachel, yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Like whenever like reading reviews and things, but so you might start thinking of like the imposter syndrome. Can I really actually be a writer and be able to bring up the reviews and like? But I think kind of reframing that and saying, well, these people aren't the readers that I want. They're not the ones who I'm writing for. So having to kind of reframe it in my head that, I just need to find the right readers for my story.
Okay, cool. Mike, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, I definitely took a lot of, fan feedback on the length of my series, and that caused me to hit writer's block, just because I had never hit the amount of words that I was writing before. So in that sense, I guess so. But besides that, like changing the way the story is based on feedback, no, not really. It's just that aspect.
Okay. What about yourself, James?
Well, yeah, I'm a deeply insecure human being with constant need for validation. So yes, absolutely, people saying mean things about me online negatively impacts my self-confidence in my own work and my own vision of my work. With that being said, that's something I've had to learn to temper and deal with over the years. I also struggle with imposter syndrome. And yeah, I mean, I remember, like, especially early on, the first couple of books, every 1 star feels like someone is flaying your soul over an open fire pit. It's awful. And you just feel like, oh yeah, I should just quit. I should just give up and set my computer on fire and do the world a favor. I have come to realize that not all feedback is universally the same. And that was a lesson that I learned, is that, like Rachel said, and I'm so glad that she mentioned it, reframing it and realizing, like, hey, my book doesn't need to appeal to anyone or to everyone. It needs to appeal to a very small tribe of readers. Because realistically, even if you don't want to be a bestseller, like if your goal is, I want to do this and make a living doing this, you don't have to have 10,000 or 100,000, fans reading your thing. Like if you have 1,000 true fans who really love your thing and are going to buy your thing every single time you put out a new thing, and they're going to buy it in ebook and paperback and audiobook, that's enough to sustain a career. And so once you realize that you're not looking for everyone, you're only looking for this sort of ideal reader for your work, and you're only trying to connect with that ideal, this minimal group of people that you need to functionally stay afloat, those are the only opinions that really start to matter. The other thing that I'll say, when you're like in the process and you're getting critiques from your work, I don't particularly like critique group style feedback, because I feel like critique groups end up overworking books to death and sort of robbing them of all of the things that actually make them good as art. And it ends up sort of being a book that's written by committee, which I think doesn't necessarily work. With that said, if you have a couple of those ideal trusted readers, and this is not some random dude on Royal Road who says, this author's dumb and he sucks at everything. Like, okay, don't pay attention to that person. But if you have a pool of 5 ideal readers, these are part of your tribe that you've carved out for yourself, and you trust their opinion because they like the kind of things that you write. If one of them says, there's this one point in the book that I didn't really like, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to make a note about it. But if 2 or 3 of my ideal readers come back and they all mention the same thing, they're like, hey, this thing that you did in chapter 27 made me want to put the book down. That's a thing that I will consider going back and workshopping and revising. Because again, these aren't random people. These are my ideal readers. These are my tribe that I found from the wild and I have collected unto myself. And they're all telling me this one thing didn't sit right with me. It was out of character. The character seemed dumb. It made me want to stop reading the book. that's the biggest sin that I can commit, is to write something that makes the reader want to set the thing down. So if I'm getting multiple points of feedback on the same thing from my ideal reader group, then yeah, I'll consider tweaking it and changing it.
It's a fair point, but I think the key aspect there is it's got to be someone trusted, particularly with the number of people that write feedback on Royal Road and various bits and pieces and all these other platforms that you might publish on. They don't know you. They don't, they're just writing a comment at the end of the day, and it's definitely important that they are trusted individuals. Have you ever found yourself allowing the quality of a story that you're writing to dip because you've been trying to get through a block? Rachel?
So I would say yes and no. So yes, by the fact that just getting through the writer's block by getting that first draft, writing or dictating, just sprinting through to get some words on the page and not worrying about the quality and just allowing it to be very, very messy, very bad. But knowing later on when I'm in that edit phase, I can go back around, I can ditch it, I can get rid of it altogether, or I can, use it and just tweak it. So that's what I would do in that situation.
Mike, yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the first couple times I've stumbled onto writer's block, one of the ways that some people sometimes get through it is they brute force it, right? You just have to write, even if it's the worst stuff that you can think of, just getting you through that momentary block can really help. And yeah, I've written through and then I go back and I'm like, man, these last two chapters, I gotta completely redo them. They're complete garbage. Kind of goes back to what James had said, something was wrong in the previous chapter, so you have to go back and do that again. And so yeah, I've definitely have tried to get through writer's block, and the quality has definitely dipped. But then I just, I always in my mind I'm like, this is not something I'm going to put out. But it's definitely helped me move through the writer's block, and then you just go back and change it, and by then the juices are flowing, so you can just really pick up from where you left off.
Timothy?
Ditto. Just is very true, and it's kind of how I've done it in the past. I'm very linear with my writing, so for me, sometimes I do have to kind of force my way through, even when I'm feeling like I'm not writing the best. I have to, if I want to get to the part that I know I can write, I have to get through the part that I'm struggling with. So very much what Rachel and Mike said.
I am also a linear writer, Timothy, where I envy the authors that are like, oh yeah, I'll just jump to a different scene, and I'm like,
yeah,
you son of a bitch, how dare you have that skill set? I hate you forever. No, because it's start at the start, finish at the finish, and it's all the way through and with no skipping, and that's sort of my process. And in terms of the question, perfection is the enemy of progress. You have to understand, I think perfection is a coping mechanism that really has to do with fear. The fear is, if I put my thing out into the world, people might not like my thing. And so I'm going to perfect my thing. I'm going to iterate on it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the result is you never finish the thing. And so you never have to put the thing out into the world where people might judge the thing and not like the thing. And so I think perfectionism is actually this coping mechanism against the judgment of rejection. And so when you recognize that, no, writing isn't the only part, publishing is also the thing. And to publish it, I have to have a thing that's done. I have to make progress. And so when I get in a really particularly tight spot where I'm really feeling writer's block or I'm really feeling imposter syndrome, one of the things I'll tell myself, because in those days, I'll think, God, I'm a shit writer. I'm really bad at this. And so what I'll tell myself is, okay, then your job today is to write the worst possible version of this chapter that you can. Because in my head, I'm like, I know I can't write the best possible version, but I'm an awful writer, which means I can sure as shit write the worst possible version of this chapter. And so that's my goal, is to write the worst possible version of this chapter, but to get it done, knowing that I can always edit something that's bad, but I can't edit something that's blank. And so that's the mindset that I go into it. It doesn't matter that it sucks. I know it's going to suck. I'm going to make it suck just as long as I'm making forward progress, and then I can come back and fix it later. And so that's the mindset I try to cultivate when I'm really deep in the trenches and I need to figure out a way to move forward.
Fair enough. I was going to say, all of us here, I think all of us here, have posted on Royal Road. Am I right?
I have not done that, no.
You haven't, Mike?
I have not. I heard it's I heard it can be good and bad, so I have not delved into Royal Road as of yet, but for this second project that I am working on, it will be first posted to Royal Road, so it'll be my first foray there.
Yeah, it's an interesting place at times. But basically, when you're looking at things like Royal Road, when you publish onto Royal Road, you're publishing chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter, and you are setting yourself a schedule that you're trying to maintain. I know from my own perspective of doing that on Royal Road that I had to adjust my own schedule to meet the needs, because I was getting to the point where I couldn't keep up, and my quality, and I felt at that point in time that I was getting writer's block, because I was like, I just can't keep the pace going. Would you say that the schedule of your own writing in particular has potentially impacted you when it has come down to the progression of your stories? If we start with James?
Yeah, so I'm on Royal Road, and I will honestly say that is the hardest part about being on Royal Road, because my process, I cringe at the idea of posting a rough draft in a place where people can read it. Like, that is my living nightmare that I experience on a daily basis. Because again, when I get in the trenches, I'm like, I'm going to write the shittiest possible thing that I can, but then it's done. But I can't post that to Royal Road. And so generally I have to be 10 chapters ahead of whatever I'm posting on Royal Road to make sure that I have time to go back and do at least one or two editorial passes on the material before it goes out to Royal Road. The people who can just like they just like go on Royal Road, they're like typing, they're typing their chapter on Royal Road, and then they just like that's the craziest thing I ever heard in my whole life. And there are people that do that. It's crazy to me. The level of confidence and no fucks to have that you must have to be able to do that. I am envious. That's not me. With that said, there are a lot of people that works for, and that the tightness of the deadline and the schedule propels them forward. To a limited degree, I don't work well with deadlines. I feel like deadlines give me extra stress and extra pressure, and they actually make writer's block worse. But I will give myself sort of self-imposed deadlines for the day, not necessarily in terms of word count, but in terms of writing sprints. So I don't really focus on word count anymore. Rather, I do 30-minute intervals of writing sprints. And when I'm doing a writing sprint, I have this little hourglass thing that I flip. When this thing's going, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not checking Facebook. I'm not checking emails. I'm not. If my wife or kids come into the office, they see my stupid little hourglass going, they know, oh no, I need to silently back out of this room because it's time to write. And so what I do instead is I'll block out a certain number of word sprints that I need to do every day. And my general goal is 6, which is 3 hours of actual writing time. And for me, it doesn't matter how much I get done, because some scenes are harder than other scenes. As long as at the end of the day, I can sit down and say, yeah, I did 6 solid word sprint chunks. It doesn't matter what my word count is. I put in the effort. That's the goal that I wanted to hit, and I hit that goal. I can stamp this day as being a success, and I can move on and do it again tomorrow.
Cool. Timothy?
Well, in terms of Royal Road, I kind of had the opposite problem when I was putting my most recent series, Path of the Titans, up there. I'd actually completed almost the 3 books, and then I was slowly putting it up, and I was like, oh crap, I need to put out more because I'm running up against publisher schedules. And so I kind of dumped it. But in a more general sense with deadlines, for me, they squeeze the creativity out of me, and it hurts. And and I have them still, and I still give myself mini deadlines of, getting so many words done a day and whatnot. And those aren't as bad, but when you have that looming deadline over your head, it's like that hot sun when you're out in the desert and you have no water. It's just slowly killing you. But it is part of being a writer. So it's something I cope with, and something that kind of gives me writer's block or burnout, however you want to look at it. But yeah, so yeah.
Okay. Mike, I know you've not been on Royal Road, mate, but would you say that in relation to that, have you sort of gone through a similar process?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's terrifying to think about posting a Roller Road just for this exact reason, because when you promise something to readers and you don't deliver, I mean, it's like fire and brimstone if you don't put out that chapter. So I can see why it'd be so challenging, especially if you're not a full-time author. I mean, with a full-time job plus family plus whatever else crap you got going on in your life. I can see why quality would dip because of those constraints. But for me, I don't know. Right now I do have deadlines just because I am signed with Podium for audiobooks, so there is those deadlines on that end, because you do need the finished book to be able to do the audiobook. So it's almost the same concept. But yes, I mean, it can be good or bad. I think sometimes having that discipline of having to write every day till you hit the deadline is good, but at the same time, I think you could definitely hit writer's block because of it, because you're also stressed out about life, and you gotta write this freaking book, and you gotta keep fans happy, and gotta make money, and all those little things that just keep building up that always just ends up breaking the camel's back. So I can see why it'd be challenging, definitely for that.
Rachel?
Yeah, I would say for one of ours that we posted on Roller Road, Aoife and I, we slowly cut back the amount of chapters that we were posting weekly, and in a way, because we took on another project or two, and so, but we set it up, in the expectations, we're dropping back we let our readers know that we're going to drop back to once per week, but it eventually got to be a point where we were writing it the night before, and we were to the writing the day of, like
that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Been there myself.
And so we ended up also setting like we had our min and max of word count on our kind of blurb intro, what to expect for readers. So we would always make sure we'd hit the min amount no matter what, and we still self-edited it. We couldn't just throw it up there or write in the dialogue box, as Jam was talking about. Some people do. We couldn't do that to ourselves.
And then there's those crazy people that do live on their streams, and they're like, right, and they post it live, and it's like, oh man, can't do it.
Yeah.
Real quick before we move on, I wanted to touch on something Mike said, and it's just an interesting thing for all of the writers that are out there, and it has to do with kind of self-imposed deadlines. But one of the things Mike said is that, when you write full time, like that's kind of the dream, and that you'll be so much more productive. There's an interesting thing that we have seen, because again, I run Shadow Alley. So we've seen a lot of writers, we've worked with a lot of writers who've transitioned and gone full time. One of the craziest things that I see almost every time a writer goes full time is their production actually goes down for about 6 months after they start going full time. And it's this interesting thing where when being a writer is not your full-time job, you generally have less time to do it. And so subconsciously you realize, I need to really make that time count, because you think, I only have an hour. That's the only time. I only have an hour from 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning. That's the only time that I'm going to get today to do the writing. And so when you sit down to write, you're productive. You're way more productive, because you're like, I have to make this time count because there's no other time. And so there's kind of this self-imposed deadline where you have to be productive. And then when you go full time, you think, well, I have all the time in the world now. I could write right now, but I have like 9 hours. I can do so much. You know what? I'm going to check my email.
Take a nap.
And then I'll write. And then you check your email and you're like, I'm going to get a cup of coffee and go for a walk. And then you come back, you're like, oh, someone pinged me on Facebook. That's important. I should probably go respond to this group. And then you do that. And Then before you know it, it's lunchtime. You haven't written anything. And then it gets to the afternoon and you're like, man, the whole day's gone by and I've literally written nothing. How did that happen? Well, it's fine. I'll do it tomorrow because I have all the time in the world because I'm a full-time writer. So as soon as people go full-time, it's almost like they, again, subconsciously take their foot off the gas pedal because time, which was constrained before, is now abundant. And so they don't feel that same sense of urgency to get stuff done. And so I don't know how to, so what I would say, just as a follow-up, is that a general piece of writing advice to keep away writer's block is that before you make writing a full-time job, treat it like a job before it is. Because then if you built those habits of urgency and writing being the most important thing, then when you do transition, there's a better chance of carrying those habits over so that you still feel that sense of urgency to write and get things done. And you're not going to, drop off the cliff where you don't write for 6 months because all of a sudden time is an unlimited factor. And I've seen that happen a lot.
No, thank you for that, James. Has I gone round everybody that time? I think I had. I think you were just picking up on that last bit by Mike, weren't you? So writer's block in general then, if there was three things that you could suggest to try and prevent writer's block, and not massive long sentences, but just three things that you can think of as individuals to try and prevent that writer's block from occurring, what would they be? And I will start with Rachel, please.
So I would say set a routine. So piggybacking off of what James had said, set a routine, set up your space. Like if you're going to sit down at the table next to your desktop, light a candle, whatever, have your coffee and a snack, get that going. That way you're ready to go. Secondly would be if you could even try like gamifying the system. So like doing sprint runs with competitions with others, or having your own leaderboard of like how fast can I be in this certain sprint, what streak runs and things like that. And then 3 would be to give yourself rewards, and then but do so also immediately as well as long term. A lot of people do it with the end of the project, it's a big reward, or end of the week, a big reward for hitting their word counts or whatever they want. But I would say even if you're struggling with writer's block, having an immediate reward, whether it's a piece of candy or whatever, just to get up and like literally stand up and shout like, yay, I did it. That is going to give your brain like a dopamine hit of, success.
Cool. Timothy, yourself?
I don't know if I can come up with 3 different things. If I had 3 tools, I might. Oop, cat just fell. I might be better equipped to avoid it myself. But some of the things that I said, one that Rachel said, routine is big, and that's one I rely on a lot. Another one that I would suggest is pacing yourself. I know for me, when I first went full-time or a little bit thereafter, I found that I could write a good bit, and so I did, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote to the point where I kind of burned myself out and had one of my first burnouts, like major ones. So pacing yourself is a big one, and then just taking breaks or doing it in sprints is probably another good one. That I need to probably try more myself, because I'm kind of a stubborn writer where I'm sitting in front of the computer and I'm like, you're going to write those words and you're staying here until it's done, which doesn't always work. I just end up staring at my computer.
Forcing yourself.
Yeah. But
staring at the same sentence for like 10 minutes and you're like, what the hell?
Yep. And I've done that before. I've done that last week where I just stared at him. It's like, I'm going to finish you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. What about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, I would say don't lose the love of writing and like what you're doing. Again, if like it becomes tedious and almost like job-like, then it's kind of you'll be hitting writer's block more often. 2, it would probably be take breaks, definitely. Take care of yourself and other things that you need to do. And, whether that be reading, to get the creative juices flowing again, like do that. And then focus, avoid distractions. So like there's like apps and programs you can put on your computer and your phone to like not let you access Facebook and other things, and like the only thing that lets you access is like Word or Google Docs, whatever you're using to write, so that you can't just be looking at other things and be distracted. I think that's a big one that I've found. I even have like this little contraption I bought on Amazon where it locks your phone away in like this little box, and you can set a timer for how long you need to lock it away. And so I do that. So that really helped a lot.
Cool.
There's already a lot of good advice. I will say again, develop a routine. Make sure that you stick to it. I think writing sprints are absolutely invaluable because they become procedural goals as opposed to result-oriented goals. You're not trying to get 3,000 words a day. You're just trying to get 6 writing sprints a day. That's something you can control regardless of how many words you put out. So procedural-oriented goals always help with writer's block, in my opinion. Know that it's going to happen. Go back and reread the last 10,000 words and figure out if there's a reason why it's happening. And then the last thing I'll say is if you're experiencing a bout of writer's block, one tool that you can use is instead of trying to write long form, bullet point out the chapter that you're working on. So again, instead of trying to write down all of the details, like what the chapter is, so just bullet point it. Joe walks in the bar and then this thing happens, and then there's this really cool fight, and the monsters come in through the walls and it's awesome, and this thing happens. You're not really writing, and so you can tell yourself, "Oh, no, I'm not writing. I'm just bullet pointing," right? So you can almost trick your brain into doing the work instead of actually doing the work, and then you go back through and you can incorporate a lot of those bullet points into the actual writing of the thing. And sometimes just making enough forward progress where it's on the page and you can kind of see the structure and the pacing of the scene helps you to go back in and sort of put meat on the bones, and that can kind of break you through the scene if you're experiencing writer's block too. So that's another trick.
Cool. Slightly different question. When was the last time you felt inspired? And I suppose we need to be inspired really to get past that writer's block. So it does sort of loosely tie in. But I just like to understand when the last time was that you actually felt inspired, and sort of like what was it that sparked your creativity? If I could start with you, Timothy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I think the last time I was really felt inspired was the ending of my last book. And I'm trying to think more specifically what it was that was inspiring me about it, but I really liked how it came together, and I really felt that love of writing that kind of keeps me going and stokes the fires of my imagination. And I can't think specifically what it was about the scene or that came together for it, but I just remember that I was really feeling it. So yeah. So that would have been a couple of weeks ago.
Cool. Mike?
Yeah, I would say last week when my second book dropped. It's always inspiring seeing your book being published, for everyone to read, good or bad. But yeah, just, for 30 years, I always dreamt about being a writer and putting things out. And so, I also got in the same day I got in the mail my book poster that I framed and put up on my wall, kind of like what James has behind him. And just seeing that up there and just be like, damn, it's real, it's out there. Just inspired me to, keep writing, even if it's, I'm not the greatest writer in the world and I don't have the greatest, following ever, but just doing what I love and, just keep on. I think JD had said a really good thing. Keep doing what you love, have faith in your vision and your steps, so that's a really good thing.
James, what about yourself?
I have an interesting relationship with the muse. There's a lot of writers that talk about the muse like it's this unicorn and they can only write when it shows up. And it's like, it happens once a month on the full moon and then the light hits me and then I feel inspired to write. My muse is a gimp who I keep chained in the basement. And then I flick the lights on at 7 a.m. and I'm like, hey, bitch, time to get to work. Got to do the thing and pay the bills, and that's my muse. So
Is his name Jez? No.
Jesse.
How did you know? That was such a good guess. It's so right on the nose. No, so I think it's hard, right? Because I think I understand the idea of like being inspired, and there are definitely points where I am inspired, but a lot of the time, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but a lot of the time it is a job, and it's just showing up and doing the work in the same way you would show up and do any other type of work. And this is the craziest thing, again, having done this for such a long time over such a volume of books, is that I'll find that there are moments where I'm inspired and I'm writing and the words feel like they're flowing so good. And then there are other days where I feel like this sucks and I'm bad at this, and every single sentence feels like I'm pulling a tooth to get it out. The funny thing is, when I go back 2 or 3 weeks later and I'm editing the books, I almost without exception can't tell the difference in writing quality from the time that I was inspired and the time that it felt like pulling teeth. Like quality wise, there's very little difference between the two, because I think that writing is a skill, and to a certain degree it's muscle memory, right? So the longer you do it, the more you do it, you fall back into the rhythm of how you tell stories and how you construct sentences and how you write books. And so even when it's really hard, you just fall back into the muscle memory of the thing that you've done 100 or 1,000 times before, and it kind of comes out the same. In terms of when have I felt inspired, again, there are times when I'm writing where I feel inspired, but generally for me, I would consider myself, I like telling stories more than I like writing books. So the thing that I love doing that I always feel inspired to do is brainstorming. So when I'm coming up with a new idea, when I'm sitting down and I'm scribbling in the notebook and I'm coming up with wonky, crazy ideas or a new system or a new world, or I'm workshopping with other authors, that's when I feel most inspired. Because then it's just pure creativity. It's just storytelling for storytelling's sake. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not trying to polish it and make it perfect. I'm just being creative and wild and coming up with whatever weird ideas I want. So that's usually the time where I feel most inspired creatively.
Excellent. And finally, Rachel.
Yes. So I think, James, like having a co-author, like having Aoife around, like whenever we do our plotting sessions, we get to like talk back and forth. And I really feel inspired whenever I see, like, if she takes the front end of that, of what we plotted, and I'm like reading through it, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And so I get to add on to that. And so having that and see it come to life is really inspiring for that creativity.
Cool. Right, guys, we've only got a couple of minutes left before Geneva's going to chop us off the air. So if once again I can just ask for you to go around, you guys, talk about what projects you're working on, where you're up to, and where you can be found. James, if we can start with yourself.
Yeah, you can find all my James A. Hunter. You can find all my books on Amazon, on Audible. Check out Viridian Gate Online, Rogue Dungeon, Vigilbound. Or you can check out my newest work, Discount Dan, which is up on Royal Road. I think Geneva will post my link tree. There's also an opportunity to sign up for advanced reader copies for Discount Dan if you want to be on my ARC team. So check out my link tree. You can also find all of my books on ShadowValleyPress.com, or all of the other amazing books that we publish: Unintended Cultivator, Bog Standard Isekai, Apocalypse Redux. There's, again, like 300 of them. So go check out all of our great books at ShadowValleyPress.com.
Excellent. Timothy?
The best place to find my stuff is just Amazon. If you follow me on there, you'll get the releases. I also have a website where you can get physical copies a little bit cheaper than what you'd find on Amazon, and that's intended. So check that out. Other than that, I'm working on Dragonstone Academy, and I hope to get that out to you guys here in the next month or so.
Cool.
It's going to be a lit RPG kind of cultivation elements, a fun little story. So,
excellent. Mike, yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, you can find my Primal Age series on Amazon. You can also find me on Patreon, author Michael Norris, and then obviously you guys can also follow Fables Magazine on Facebook. We post monthly on the 1st or 2nd, depending on how things go. and we talk about everything lit RPG, cultivation, news. We do author interviews. So yeah, check that out, and also check out my my recently released book, Rising, book 2 of the Primal Age series. It's also on Amazon, and the audiobook will be dropping on December 24th. So
Thank you very much. And Rachel.
Okay. And I'm Rachel A. Cooper. I co-author with Aoife Y. And right now we're currently working on a Titan's Core lit RPG isekai is dropping twice a week on Royal Road. It's also available on our Patreon, a few chapters ahead there. We have another project that with a working title of Necro Chick, and that one will be dropping to Royal Road next year.
Amazing.
What about you, Boswell? Where can we find you and your books?
Oh,
yeah. You can find me on Royal Road. The first 3 books are up and available. I'm currently working on the 4th and a couple of sort of like side a novella and a little side story as well to do with the same sort of world. And they are due to be published next year through Podium, but it's still quite a way off yet. So yeah. Anyway. Guys, thank you very much for your input and your insights and your thoughts. It was great to hear them and the time that you guys put forward to it. And if I can ask that we do the uncomfortable wave, please.